Good evening, everyone. Melissa here. Hope you're all well, having a great weekend. Sun has been shining here in Adelaide today. I got to enjoy some sunshine, which was beautiful and definitely much needed. Tonight we've got Dr. Anthony Chaffee on with us. Just seen he's joined, so I will quickly try and get him on with us and we'll get started. Thanks for joining us. Oh, beautiful. There we go.
All right. There we go. There we
I
go.
think we can...
Hey.
Hello, Dr. Anthony Chaffee.
Hello. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Let me just fix my camera.
Nice.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Of course.
Yeah, it's really exciting times for everyone, I guess, in the carnivore community. There's so much happening. And as I mentioned just before, we've got Carnivore Collective Live happening here in Adelaide in November, and they're coming down to join us, which we're very excited about. So firstly, I wanted to thank you for joining us in November.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you. I have spoken to a lot of people who are very excited to see you in person, and I think one of the greatest things too, and it says a lot about the carnivore community, is that a lot of the other guest speakers are really excited to see everybody else who's going to be there speaking. So you know some people, you've had podcasts before with them, but you've never actually seen each other live in person. So I think that's very exciting for especially those who are attending to see those connections in person. So yeah, it's very exciting times.
Yeah, definitely. That's always one of the best parts too. Is that meeting the other people, all the other speakers, and hearing their talks, and just meeting the people that are there as well. It's so it's interesting because the talks are interesting, but it's also sort of a bit of a social event, which is nice.
Absolutely. Here in one of the reasons why I created the event was that I would see what was happening over in America, and there are a lot of events where you and many of the other speakers were coming together and doing these kind of events, and I thought to myself, well, there's nothing really happening like that here, and thought maybe I'll just create it. So very grateful for all who are involved. And by the way, we may have an additional guest speaker. I'm not going to tell you who it is exactly, but I will give you a clue because you might figure it out. He seems to really like taking part in weddings. So there may be. So I'll let everybody know as soon as I have final confirmation on that. But we may have another guest speaker, and it's going to make it even more amazing. So exciting times. So,
yeah.
So
very good.
yeah, it will be great. So I really wanted to start with you are one of the leading experts in the carnivore way of life and lifestyle diet in the world. So how did you get to this point? Where did this all start for you? If you could share with those who are watching.
Well, I mean, I came to the carnivore diet just because I had a professor that told us about how toxic plants were, and really impressed that upon us. That's where I guess it's like a sort of catchphrase now. Plants are trying to kill you comes from. I didn't say that. My professor said that to me, and that's what convinced me to ditch plants. And then when I came back to it, and then sort of realized that this was our biologically appropriate diet for our species, and that does matter. It matters for every single species of life on Earth. That when I figured that out and I sort of realized that this had a massive impact in our health and the health of my patients, I started just digging into as much of the literature as I could. I was taking some time off work. I just finished doing humanitarian work in Bangladesh. I was volunteering there as a doctor, and um, I had some free time before I actually came down to Australia. I moved to Australia sort of at the end of that year, sort of early the next year. And so I had time to just dig into the research and literature, and I spent about, I don't know, 8 or 10 hours a day reading studies and papers and asking questions and trying to find out as much as I could about this crazy idea that humans should only be eating meat. And I just found just it, countless avenues of evidence to support this. And then I sort of said, okay, well, what about, there's a lot of people going plant-based, a lot of doctors and nutritionists that say this is a really good idea. Okay, what the hell am I missing? I don't want to be just in a bubble chamber, listening to myself speak. I need to hear somebody else. And what John Stuart Mill said was, if you only know your side of the argument, then you don't know much. If you haven't heard the opposing argument in its most compelling form, from its most ardent and compelling arbiter, then you don't even know what the argument is, right?
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, who are the best people on the side? I'm going to go listen to them, go to their websites, listen to their talks. And I just found that it was all fundamentally flawed, predicated on misinformation, known lies, like the whole cholesterol myth about heart disease. I mean, that's just a fraud that has been shown again and again to be bought and paid for by the sugar companies and the processed food companies. It was never shown in the first place, and all that information that they based all that off of, we know is fraudulent, and so you have to throw that out. So all this stuff was based on misinformation, outright lies, or just things they just made up, trying to say that, oh, humans have always been herbivores. Like, get out of here. Like, just stop it. Like, no one is saying that. And evidence certainly does not support that. So, it just came from just trying to educate myself as much as possible. And as a result, I got very interested and passionate about it, and I wanted to talk to people about it. So I was first on with Dr. Sean Baker on his original podcast, Human Performance Outliers. I was one of his early guests in episode 34. We talked all about plant toxins and how I thought that these diseases were actually coming from eating the wrong foods. And it's sort of, I didn't have a social media presence. I didn't really care to. I wasn't doing it for that. But I just sort of was talking to more and more people about it in different forums, talking to people about it in my personal life and my professional life. The conversations just kept coming up and kept coming up, and we kept discussing it, kept having these conversations, kept having debates with people in my life or in public or in different forums online, and it just started sort of catching on around me, and I just started seeing a lot of people around me massively improve their health. My mom reversed her diabetes in 2 months. She'd been an insulin-dependent diabetic for 30 years, and now she wasn't. She wasn't on any medications, and she was just completely normal. And that, and my dad, reversed a ton of his issues. They were losing weight. They were so much better in so many ways. And and I started seeing this, again and again and again. And I started, seeing this in more and more patients and people around me. When I did move to Perth, that was just vegan, nirvana here. Like, everybody was going plant-based, and it was like, and if you weren't already plant-based, you were thinking about going because it was so pushed. And I was very, very confident in my position because I thoroughly researched it for an entire year and spent so many hours going through the data and the literature and looking at the opposing side and challenging myself and trying to find out where the flaws were. And I was just like, yeah, there are none. This is actually a thing. Yeah. And so just more and more people around me started coming around this. The doctors I worked with, the nurses I worked with, the patients that were around me, and asked what I did and what I ate and things like that. Because I was probably the only in shape doctor in the entire hospital And they're like, what the hell do you eat? And I would get asked that every day. I was like, well, you're gonna think it's crazy, but this is what I eat. And so more and more people started doing that, started spreading, started getting um, more popular around me. And but I found myself being in these conversations, especially with patients, 2, 3 times a day, where I could see something that could massively benefit their lives by fixing their diet. And I'd sort of make these inroads and start talking about it, but it would just blow their mind because they've just never heard anything like it. And so I would be in very long conversations when I have 10 minutes with each patient, and I'd be spending 45 minutes because it's important. And so I was just like, all right, I just need to. And I've been thinking about doing like a YouTube channel or something like that for a long time, but I was just like, I need to get some material online where I can just say like, here, just watch this video and take care of it from there. So that's when I finally started putting down videos, and I had a lot to say, and so I just kept making videos, and people seemed to like them, so just kept doing it, and here we are.
Fantastic. That's so great. And I think, you know, some people need the research, some people want just their experience, right? So I think for you, being someone who, you know, someone like myself, for example, I'm not someone who loves doing the research. I do love trying things and seeing how it affects or impacts me positively or negatively. And then I make choices on what I do from there. And that's why I'm so grateful to people like you and to Sean Baker and a lot of the other doctors out there and everyone who's sharing their experiences and the research, because you know, it helps us to then make a decision ourselves on what to do. And then from our own decisions and our experiences, we either decide to stay there or not. And I think that's why what you're doing is really important. Someone wrote a comment while you were talking saying I would get tired of eating eggs and steak all day or something like that. And I think if you're really doing carnivore, you'll never get sick. You'll never get sick of eating meat and eggs all day.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No. I mean, cows don't get sick of eating grass.
Yeah.
Lions don't get sick of eating gazelle. It's like, oh my God, because again, gazelle. Can we just not have like a fresh salad once? You know, no, they don't. That's not what they want. You know,
Yeah.
Your adapted food tastes good when you're hungry because you're recognizing those nutrients more favorably. Your brain recognizes like, ooh, we need that, bring it in.
Yeah.
And so by definition, it always tastes good because
Yes.
you know you don't eat when you're not hungry, and if you and that's the natural way of limiting the amount that you eat and only getting the right amount is that it doesn't taste good when your body doesn't need those nutrients. And your brain's actually very sophisticated, and you use it, and your taste buds are very sophisticated as well. And so it tells you when you're actually hungry and you need those nutrients. And so you eat the meat, tastes amazing, you enjoy that, and then you eventually get to the point where it doesn't taste amazing. You just sort of naturally stop. And so if it doesn't taste good, then you're not hungry. So the only time you're going to be bored of eating is when you're not hungry. Yeah, that's when you stop, and that's how you know you should stop.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. One of the you know, the regular questions I get asked, and I'm sure you do also, is about well, how do I start this carnivore diet? And I know it may seem really simple, and it is simple, right? But for those who, and I think it's where the simple or not simple comes into play, I think, is for people who can't believe something like this so simple can be so great for you, and then having to make a change from what they're doing to eating just meat. So what do you say for those who are just starting out or might be interested in getting started? What is the process? Going from where, I mean, there's probably a few different ways about it. I mean, I didn't go straight from, say, standard Australian American diet to carnivore. I was doing more keto. But what is your advice, or what do you say to people wanting to get started?
So usually it's strike while the iron's hot. You know, you try to take advantage of that where you're just you want to do it. You know, okay, then just do it. You know, that you can do two ways. You have to decide for yourself. I think both work fine, but it's very important to start getting junk food out of the house and getting all this nonsense out of the house. If you're in a position that you can just throw out all the non-carnivore food, that's probably the best, because it's like if you're trying to quit smoking, you don't want to leave packs of cigarettes around the house. And when you have a moment of weakness, if those cigarettes are unavailable, well, you're going to be in a better position to get through those cravings and not succumb. And the same goes for garbage food. You could start in a sort of a slower way. You can just get rid of the junk food. You sort of get rid of processed carbs, get rid of the sugar, the alcohol, those sorts of things. Start cutting down, the fruits and vegetables and all that sort of stuff, and then cut out the nightshades, and then cut out the beans and seeds, legumes and nuts, and all that sort of stuff. And you just sort of 1 week at a time, you're just cutting off one more thing until finally you just pick a date, circle it on the calendar, where it's just like, at this point we're gone, and we're not doing this anymore. If you just do it like, oh, I'll get to it eventually, it's never going to happen. So you need to have it in a controlled manner. And so that's also why in addiction medicine, and just when you're trying to quit something or change a habit, cold turkey seems to be the best as far as a habit is formed. Maybe that doesn't work for some people. Maybe some people have a bit of a problem from a health perspective. Maybe you transition a bit more slowly. But if that's not you, and you can do fine with it, then just cut it out. Just start that day. Just cut out all plants, mushrooms, sugars, artificial sweeteners, and artificial ingredients, and just eat eggs, meat, and water. And you just eat the meat that tastes good, that you enjoy, and that you can afford and have access to. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And and so it's when you have that idea in your head, it's really good to just hop on it, because if you limp into it, you're more likely to not actually do it. At some point you have to start.
Yeah.
At some point you just have to do it.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to do it like, okay, well, I'll do it in a stage progression, fine. Mark it on the calendar. I'm cutting this out here, cutting this out here, cutting this out here. On this day, 4 weeks from now, I'm just meat and water for 30 days.
Yeah.
But that's a good one too. Is it, giving yourself a short-term time frame. It's 30 days. That's it. I'm not doing this for the rest of my life. I'm just doing this for 30 days and see how I like it. And if you like it and you enjoy it, do it for another 30 days and another 30 days, and then say, okay, well, maybe I'll try it for a year or 6 months. And then eventually, you might try something else, and you'll see how that affects you, and you'll feel wretched, and you'll just be like, wow, that was awful. I don't want to do that again. That's not how I want to live my life. And then you'll come back. At least you have that 30 days of reference that you can look to. And even if you do slip off, and you slip off for a long time, you ask anybody who's done this, they'll say, like, yeah, when I'm only eating meat and water, I always feel my best. I always feel my best. I like eating this other stuff, but yeah, I always feel my best on there. And that's fine. At least they know, and they can make an adult decision. And eventually, if they get to a point where they're like, you know what, I actually want to feel my best. I actually don't, subprime is not good enough anymore. At least they know what it is. So that's probably pretty good. And then support groups. If you're very strong-willed and you just don't care what people think, great. I mean, it doesn't bother me what other people do, and it also doesn't bother me what other people think of what I do. And so if when I was doing this, people were like, "Was that?" I was like, yeah, "Look, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it." And it wasn't going to change what I wanted to do, because I knew what was right, and I knew what was right for me, and I knew how good I felt, and so that's fine. But some people do get sort of hit by the pressure. I mean, I knew the facts very, very well at that point, and so I could discuss this with people, and I would end up turning them around. They weren't turning me around, and but if you're not as clear on the facts, and you haven't done as much research as that, do the research, educate yourself, understand what the hell this is about. Go to the vegan websites too. Read their books, see what the hell they're saying, so you know what they're arguing. Hey, maybe you think that's the way to go. I've seen people do it. I had a patient that was carnivore. He read Dr. Greger's book, How Not to Die, and he was just like, oh God, I got to get rid of this cholesterol and this fat. I got to lower my cholesterol, that sort of stuff. And he came back in vegan, and we were talking about it. And then I gave him the counterpoints and the evidence for that. And he was just like, all right, well, I'm going back carnivore again. So it was like, it's important to understand both sides, because again, if you don't know if you only know your side of the argument, then you don't know much.
Mm.
And so learn all that. And once
Yeah.
you learn that and you really understand it, well, then it's very easy to stick with it. And if you're in Facebook groups and you're talking to people and they're helping educate you, and you're saying like, well, I got an interesting question. Someone said this could happen on carnivore. Is that a thing? And you'll have 50 people tell you what they think and show you the evidence for it. And that can help too. So those are some good ways to get started and feel
Yeah.
more confident in your decision.
Yes, thank you for that. It's very helpful advice there. And in regards to how you feel, how it makes you feel, one of my most favorite videos, or something you said in a video, was about feeling superhuman. I forget exactly what you said in that video, and I've since not been able to find it, but I wish I'd saved it. But it really resonated with me, because when people say to me, "Can't believe you just eat meat," and I often say to them, I'm not doing it because I have to. I'm actually eating meat because I'm choosing to every single day. And aren't you more interested to know why I'm doing that? And why don't you ask me those questions? And so when we do start conversating about it, I talk about this feeling of this superhuman feeling, because when you try it, you get to experience that. And when you feel like that, when you do go back to the contrast, or you may slip up or want to try going onto something else, nothing that I've ever done compares to how I feel when I'm on carnivore. And it's enough to keep me on it, because I don't want to be any less than that feeling, the mental clarity. I feel like I can see the world clearer through my eyes. My skin, hair, nails are, all healthy, and the mental clarity and vibrancy is just another level. And I used to be really into eating the rainbow smoothie bowls, juices, like 10 or so years ago. So this was a really hard change for me to make when I got to that point. But once I did, there was no going back. And you just can't compare that feeling to anything, really. So I wish people would really think about, I think obviously we live in a society where everybody is actually forgotten what it feels like to be really well and vibrant. And so they're just putting up with a lot until they try something new, maybe actually feel a lot better, and then decide not to go back. So what's your biggest why? What drives you in the work that you do and the message that you share about carnivore?
Oh, the reason why I do this is because it works, and it just helps people. And I've never seen anything help people like this. And I think that it's completely wrong and evil to keep this away from people, because everybody should be inherently healthy to a greater or lesser extent. As a species, we are extremely healthy. All life on Earth is naturally healthy because it has to be. We're descended from the winners, the ones who survived. And each species evolved from other species that survived better than every other species and outcompeted every other species. You can't do that if you're a sickly, disgusting, fat, heart disease ridden, diabetic. Like, it just doesn't work, And so, carving our dominance out of the nature during ice ages, on the harshest of conditions, when so many other species went extinct. You can't do that as a bunch of, just rotting, chronically sick, fat losers. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
So we're not, and so the natural state of humanity is that of health. We're supposed to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And, it goes back to Hippocrates. One of the things he said, well, two things he said. One, that was, let food be thy medicine and medicine thy food. So they understood how important it was to eat properly and how certain things could cause disease. And then another thing he said was, before you try to heal someone, first ask them if they're willing to give up that which is making them sick. Meaning that they're not supposed to be sick on their own. They're doing something to themselves that's causing them to be sick. And if they just got that out of the way and took the anchor off their back, they'd be able to fly. And so it is so simple. Proper health is so simple. And as a doctor, as someone who actually got into medicine because I actually wanted to help people, not to make money. I mean, you make so much more money doing nearly anything else. If I just wanted to make money, I'd just go into business, and I would have been, a multi-millionaire several times over by now. So that's not that hard. I have a lot of friends who've done it, and and this is different. I actually wanted to help people. I wanted to do things for people that help them. I want to be able to do surgery and fix people when they were broken and dying, and be able to save their life. That's what excited me. And now I see this as something that is our natural birthright, that's been robbed from us. We should be healthy all the time. We shouldn't be facing all of these chronic diseases. They were called Western diseases because they only afflicted people in the West. And this is something that has been thoroughly documented, that these chronic diseases have emanated from the Western cultures, and that as populations get more adapted into post-agricultural Western cultures, they start getting all these Western diseases, which are now called diseases of civilization. Now they're in their pet community, so they're called human diseases. And they're all the same diseases, and they all come from the same source. You're eating something that doesn't belong in your body, and it's making you sick, either because it's toxic or has a low-grade toxin, or because it has a lack of nutrients or not bioavailable nutrients. And so by a combination of low-grade or even high-grade toxicities and malnutrition, we are manifesting these illnesses. We're getting very sick from this. We're calling it chronic disease. We give a name for it. We have a pill prescribed for it, and then we just ignore it after that. Well, how about we think about the fact that these things didn't exist in any real numbers, that heart disease did not exist in America before 1912. There wasn't a single reported death from heart attack on autopsy prior to 1912, not a single damn one in all of America. So that's a little strange, because 15 years later, it's the number one killer in America. Okay, what the hell changed? Well, in the early 1900s, before there were any heart attacks, we're eating 3 times the amount of butter and lard and animal fat than we were in the 1950s, when we started vilifying butter, lard, and animal fats. And that was when this was, still the number one killer in America, and it was just climbing after that. 4 out of 5 men smoked in the 1910s and 20s, and then it wasn't in the 1800s, and then it wasn't until after that heart disease started becoming such a major killer. So it's pretty remarkable that how massively this chronic disease pandemic has really hit. It's a very new phenomenon, and we're not recognizing that. We've been told that, well, it was probably already happening. We just didn't notice this. We weren't paying attention. We weren't doing proper screening, proper diagnostics. You can say that once, but after that, you are paying attention, right? Yes. And so if every single decade after that, things have gotten worse and worse and worse and worse in all aspects, well, then that means it's getting worse, doesn't it? And so now people say, well, you just probably weren't noticing. It's probably just a diagnostic thing. No, we said that back in the 90s. Like that excuse is used up, and that's gotten worse every single year because we were paying attention from the 90s, right? And but so that's what people...
It's also become very normal, though, hasn't it? Which is really sad, I guess, for humanity, is that being unwell and having this kind of health care system that band-aids or doesn't look at the root cause or at nutrition, it's become normal. And so because what you're explaining right now is that we've come so far away from the times when we weren't like this and we didn't have huge rates of disease, and people aren't thinking about it because they just think it's normal. It's really sad.
Yeah. Because it's been normalized, and we said, well, it's probably always happening. We just didn't notice it. And so now you've had 2 generations, 3 generations that are now of the opinion that these diseases were always happening. We just didn't notice it because we were stupid. I'm sorry. We weren't stupid. People were a hell of a lot smarter than they are now. We've been dumbed down by society, probably on purpose. And these idiot, I mean, you used to call it the TV, the boob tube, or the idiot box, because like you just sit there and you just rot your brain on the television. And these phones, I mean, they're so addictive. They're designed to be addictive, and people are just stuck on these things. And I find myself getting glued to this stupid things as well. I haven't read a book in months. It's like bugs the hell out of me because like I like reading and I like doing other things, but I find that I'm just so busy on these phones and things like that. And I am trying to do work, but then you get caught up in things that aren't work, and it's just awful. You're just on your phone all day. Um, it's it's not the case that we just didn't notice these things. It's hard to miss a heart attack, a death from a heart attack, because there's a reason they coined the phrase heart attack, because it looked like someone attacked the heart and ripped it open. When you have a heart attack, myocardial infarction, you have clot that or some sort of blockage that blocks up the coronary vessels, kills the blood supply to big patch of muscle on the heart, and that muscle dies if that's not revascularized. And so 100 years ago, couldn't really revascularize anything, so that muscle would usually die unless it did it spontaneously, which is rare. And it would that muscle would die and become weak and dead and soft, and it could rupture just from the normal pressures of beating of the heart. It could explode out and rupture through, and you have all this blood packed around it, and that would compress the heart. It would make it so it couldn't expand because there's a sac around the heart called the pericardium, and so you get a pericardial fusion, and so it's hemopericardium, and then it sort of compresses the heart. Now it can't expand because it's pushing out against blood, and it's all screwed up. You died, or it screws up the electricity of the heart. But there's a huge patch there that's dead and scarred down. These are very clear, easy signs. I mean, we had anatomy textbooks and drawings for centuries and centuries and centuries before this. Very detailed depictions of the heart. If you go walking around Paris, just around the Champs-Élysées and Notre Dame and things like that, there's little sellers that they have these little booths set up where they're just selling random things. And a lot of them are from these old French textbooks and manuscripts where they have all these beautiful old pictures and diagrams of anatomical dissections. They're hundreds of years old. So many things are from the 1500s, 1600s, and things like that. They knew what the heart was supposed to look like. And they know what it looked like if the damn thing exploded. All right. So this is not something that you just miss. Right. No. And so, no. And so, you made your name as a doctor by describing new pathologies. And so, the first person to describe something, you literally got your name on it, like Trendelenburg's gait, Colles fracture, Alzheimer's disease, Cushing's disease. Those are all named after doctors who first described that. Alzheimer's disease is something that's very common now, but it wasn't before. The Dr. Alzheimer's presented a single case of one lady in her 70s who had this strange sort of neurocognitive decline that later became known as Alzheimer's dementia. And that was the first time that anyone had ever described that type of neurocognitive decline in a human ever. And that was in 1906, right? So, like, what are we trying to say here? Are we trying to say that it's just natural that we get Alzheimer's and our brains rot? No other animal does that. No other animal does that unless there's something wrong. But no species of animal just does that regularly. You don't see like hippopotamus just drooling and like falling over and things like that. Lions walking into walls and cages in the zoo or anything like that. And they live a very long time in the zoo, and they die of old age and natural causes. They are healthy, active adults, and then one day they just slow down and just go to sleep in a dark place and don't wake up. And that's how animals normally die of old age. When they die, we decline for decades and get worse and worse and worse, and finally die in terrible ways that generally ends several years of suffering. And it's pretty tragic, like how many people have been in that situation. And I just find that that's appalling. And my own sensibilities, I just can't stomach that. And the amount of people that have died and suffered because of these lies, because someone wanted to make a buck. The sugar companies, now the drug companies are trying to just run on it. It really pisses me off. You know, you have billions of people around the world who listen to this terrible advice, and it's making them sick. And you've had hundreds of millions of people, if not billions of people, that have been seriously affected by this and have been sick for decades unnecessarily and have died prematurely. That's wrong. You know, that's murder on the grandest scale, and it's genocide.
Yeah.
And it's for what? You know, so you can sell statins for 10 cents a pill. I mean, absolutely not. So you can sell sugar and candy to children and get them addicted so that you can sucker them for life. So you can make a 5-year-old diabetic and then sell the medication for the rest of their life. There's nothing more valuable to the pharmaceutical companies and the medical establishment than a sick kid.
Yeah.
You know, if you get a kid that's chronically ill, that's it. You've got a customer for life, guaranteed, because they can't go anywhere because they'll die without your medicine and get very, very sick or much more sick
Yeah.
without your medicine. So they have to do that. And the parents have to spend the money. They have to, go into debt, mortgage their life to pay for their sick kid. And then that kid has to grow up and desperately try to make enough money to pay for their own medical bills. And now we're blaming this, the insurance or the government or, greedy people or this, that, and the other for not paying for these medical expenses for people. Well, why are they sick in the first place? They shouldn't be sick in the first place. And if we got rid of that and we had people eating properly, and they wouldn't be sick in the first place, we wouldn't have to talk about this. The idea that the problem is that our medical system needs to be changed. That's not the case. Our chronic disease situation needs to be changed. And once you fix that, then we won't need the medical establishment and the insurance companies and the drug companies. We'll only need them for things that actually go wrong and things that we can't fix on our own. We have the accidents, emergencies, an emergency C-section, a blood transfusion because of, a very difficult childbirth or an accident or something like that. Someone got a snake bite, get kicked by a horse, like all these sorts of things. These are real things that people need help with. That's real medicine. Diabetes is not real medicine. That's carbohydrate poisoning, So, if you get lead poisoning, what do? Keep drinking lead water out of the lead pipes? Like, no. I mean, no, just take this pill and you can keep drinking the leaded water. I mean, that's ridiculous. No one would do that if they understood that. So we're drinking water out of lead pipes and we don't even realize it. And we're being told, keep drinking the water, but just take this medication, literally from the American Diabetes Association. They flat out say, doesn't matter how many carbs you have, just make sure you take enough insulin to keep your blood sugar down. That's the only thing that matters. Well, of course you're going to say that, because if you eat more carbs and you need more insulin and you have to buy more product. Well, the problem with that is that insulin causes all sorts of harm in your body when it's elevated. And so that's not good enough. You're a greedy bastard and you're taking advantage of sick people by telling them that. Why don't you tell them, like, hey, if you eat less carbs, you don't need as much insulin. You don't need as much medication. I have a friend of mine, Dr. David Unwin in the UK. He's a GP there, and his sort of red pill moment was when a patient of his came in, and she'd stopped taking her diabetes medication, so he called her in to basically have a word with her and give her a talking to, and she gave him a talking to. And told him, it's just like, well, I haven't taken my diabetes medication in 9 months because I haven't needed it. Because my blood sugar is normal now.
Yeah.
Because I went on a ketogenic diet and I stopped eating carbs and I don't need it anymore. And why the hell didn't you tell me that eating carbs would raise my blood sugar and make my diabetes worse? I don't even think you're qualified to be a doctor if you don't know that and aren't telling your patients that. So what the hell, were you thinking? And he was just like, oh. And so that really made him sit up and take notice, and he started looking into it and went, holy crap, this is a real thing. And he started using it for his patients and reversing their diabetes and having, really, really good effects. And he got, roundly attacked by his colleagues at his practice and his peers at medical conferences. People would turn, when they found out who he was, they'd turn their back on him and just ignore him and walk away. They'd boo him and yell at him in conferences. I mean, it was just nasty. He's a very, very sweet man, very mild mannered. Like, that wouldn't have gone the same with me because I tend to yell back.
Yeah.
But so we'll see how that goes. But it's true. I mean, that's not real medicine. This is carbohydrate poisoning, and
Is it,
we need to treat that appropriately.
do you think there's a big educational missing piece here for people to actually understand what they can do, or what they're thinking about things differently or wrongly? And where is that education? I guess, and one of my questions I had for you was about social media, because, social media and technology sometimes gets a bit of a bad rap. But the beauty that I'm seeing, especially with the carnivore community, is how many people are sharing their stories. And I was also going to ask you, but you've shared already a bit about, what are you seeing out there through your work and in the community that you've got and others? Like, what are we seeing people experience on carnivore diet? And is people sharing experiences enough to help others do the same? And from what I'm seeing, it is, because there's such a huge amount of people sharing their stories, and then somebody else might say, oh, well, I kind of sound like that person, maybe I should give it a shot. And so I actually think there's a really great side of social media that's connecting people and enabling them to share stories and get in front of 100 people on a Sunday evening and talk about important things. So I guess for me, and also like you said, I often say I wouldn't have this experience and not want to share it with others, or not feel it my purpose to share it with others. Because when you have such a rapid change in your health, and the positive change in your health, and for many others who have had disease and sickness and been able to reverse them, like we've got a couple of guys coming to the event who have had eczema or tinnitus and things that they've been able to change and heal because of their diet. Like, why shouldn't we be sharing this? Because these stories are empowering other people to make like their own choices on what they do with their bodies. Someone said to me the other day, "Oh, Mel, you just blame everything on what we eat." And I felt like saying, because I always, make a comment about food and diet when we're talking about anything to do with, anything that's unhealthy. And I thought to myself, it's a bit like a car, right? Because that person said to me, "Oh, how about environmental or the external, how about all these other things that could be causing their illness or sickness that's not what they're eating?" And I thought to myself, well, let's think about a car, right? So a car drives, and you might get a bit of rock, hit the side of the car and dent it, or hit the window and crack the window, the windscreen, or you might drive over a screw and put a puncture in the tire. Yeah, that's going to slow the car down. But if we put the wrong fuel into that car, it's literally not going to drive. So shouldn't we be way more important about what we're putting into ourselves as fuel, rather than the external, things here and there that could be causing you to be unwell? So I think people just have to change the way they're thinking about it, really. Yeah.
Well, definitely. And, like that's like saying that, well, you always just blame getting stabbed on knives. It's like, well, you can get, okay, fair enough. You can get stabbed by a screwdriver, jagged piece of glass, and, other sorts of things. But it's mostly knives. It is mostly knives. And right now, it's a lot of knives. And so, you look at the percentage, 90% of the things that we treat now as doctors, 90% of the ailments that we treat on a day-to-day basis that walk through the door in a doctor's office in America, at least, and it's very similar for other Western countries, actually most countries around the world, are chronic diseases, are these non-communicable chronic diseases. 90% of the deaths are from non-communicable chronic diseases in the Western countries, such as Australia. It's 89% in Australia, it's 90% in America, and it's 74% worldwide. And and that's talking about in countries that have just extremes of poverty, horrible warfare, and all these other sorts of things. You have and infant mortality rates that are very high, and still 74% of deaths worldwide are are from chronic diseases. So this is the majority. This is the major problem that we are facing right now, and it is the major burden on the healthcare system. This is what we are spending money on. But the flip side of that is that's what people are receiving money for treating. And so that's what we're going up against. We're saying, well, this costs so much, this costs so much. But then you have a lot of people, and we're spending literally it's nearly $14 trillion a year. We're spending just on 5 non-communicable chronic diseases. The Harvard University School of Public Health published statistics on what it costs to treat just 5 chronic diseases. So COPD, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, type 1 and type 2, mental health disorders, and cancer. And so there's whole ranges of other, neurodevelopmental, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autoimmunity, other forms of dementia, osteoporosis, just teeming with other sorts of chronic diseases and things like that. So just those 5 were estimated to be around 7.5, nearly $8 trillion a year in 2010 worldwide. So that's trillion with a T, and that's going to be estimated to be about $14 trillion by 2030. So it's going up, right? Lots of opportunity costs of people out of work, they can't function, they're on disability, all these sorts of things. They're not able to, do their job. You have wait lists here in Australia. Right now it's a 4.5-year wait to get in to see a neurosurgeon. If you have intractable pain and you can't work, you have to wait 4.5 years. You're off work. You're on disability for 4.5 years. Then you get seen. It takes months to work you up. Maybe you need surgery and you get put on the list, and it's a year, year and a half, 2 years before you get surgery. And it might not even work. So talking about people out of work for 7 years and suffering the entire time. I mean, that's a hit on the economy too, because those people aren't working, aren't bettering their lives, aren't buying things, aren't paying taxes. Instead, they're on the dole, they're on disability, and they're suffering the whole time. They can't advance their own life. And it costs the government way more money to not pay for that treatment than it would be to it's like 10 grand. And privately, you can pay that out of your pocket. And so if you make more than $2,000 a year over the next 5 years, it's probably worth getting the surgery done privately, because then you can just get back to work and make a lot more money than that, over that time. But people don't think about that, and they think, well, I shouldn't have to. Well, you know what? You may think that, but you kind of do have to if you want to get going again. But that's the thing. So you have those lost opportunity costs, estimated to be about $46 trillion between 2011 and 2030. And then the excess deaths and premature deaths, so people having a heart attack at 30 and never being able to take care of their family and not being able to work for the next 40 years, that cost something around $23 trillion per year in 2010. It's estimated to cost $43 trillion by 2030. So you're talking about the medical establishment making about $14 trillion a year on our suffering of just those 5 diseases. But it costs us around $60 trillion a year in lost opportunity costs, excess deaths, and then we're paying for the treatments as well. So we're looking at that going, wow, that's a hefty bill. But the guys receiving that $14 trillion is like, ooh, we don't want this cash cow to go away. And so, you do have people that care more about the bottom line than they do about people's lives and their health. And that's a fact. This is why we saw a leaked slide from a presentation at Goldman Sachs a few years ago that said, is it really a viable business model to cure diseases? And the answer was no, because if once you cure the disease, it's gone. You spend millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars figuring out a cure for something. You use it once, and then that's gone. You don't recoup your investment. What is a viable business model is to not cure the disease, but treat the symptoms so that people can live with the disease for decades. And that's why sick kid is the most valuable commodity that the medical establishment has, because they can get money out of them for decades and decades and decades. Who cares if the kid's suffering and destroying their lives and dying young? They make a fortune off of this poor sick kid, and they get it off of sick adults too. So that's what you're dealing with. We have people going like, wow, this is really expensive, but then there's a lot of other people that are receiving trillions of dollars a year, lobbying like hell and paying influencers online, and who come out and say, oh, aspartame, it's not actually bad for you, it can help you lose weight. And that all came out. I mean, there was just dozens of people coming out on the same day saying that. It turns out they're all being paid by the sugar lobby, the American Beverage Association. And they're a bunch of hacks, shills, and frauds, right? So but that's what happens. They have a lot of money to spread around, and but it's costing people their lives and their money. But people are making money, so they don't want to let that go. So we have to figure this out ourselves. They're not going to do this for us.
Yeah.
And so the incentives are such that it's better when we're sick. Incentives for livestock is better for when they're well, because livestock costs money, and so, but when we're just out there healthy doing our thing, we're not worth anything to anybody, unless we're a slave or a serf and a vassal to someone. Then we produce wealth for them. But we fortunately still live in a somewhat free society, and so we're only valuable to ourselves. And if we get sick, then we have to pay for a very expensive medical expenses, expenditures, and things like that. So if we figure this out ourselves, then we don't need them. We don't need to listen to them. This is why it's so great to see people doing so well. And people can say what they want, but there's millions of people around the world that are figuring this out, and you're seeing more and more attack ads and attack columns. I got a hit piece done on me in the Guardian that I'm going to actually probably have to hit them for defamation, because they really butchered this. And so and they're doing this to try to say, like, well, people are doing this, they say they feel good, but doctors and nutritionists say it's really dangerous and it's horrible and they're going to die and all that sort of stuff. And it's just stupid, and it's wrong. And yet more and more doctors are seeing their patients massively improve their health and reverse these diseases that shouldn't be able to be reversed, that we don't think are able to reversed. So it's growing, and people are figuring it out. And then they say, well, there's all these people that do carnivore and it's horrible, and there's this carnivore cringe site or whatever. It's like, it's a tiny little site. They take like random things off Reddit that they probably wrote themselves, take a screenshot of that and go, oh, look, people are, getting hurt on the carnivore diet. It's like, shut up. No, it's not. I mean, you're just grasping at straws and desperate.
Yeah.
There are millions of people around the world that are massively improving their health, and we're just seeing it again and again and again. And us clinicians who are using this to treat patients, we're seeing diseases just go away, and we have hard objective numbers to show that. Insulin resistance of 72 dropping down to 32 in 6 weeks, right? That doesn't happen. That only goes the other way. Well, now it doesn't. And autoimmunity disappearing, having patients with coronary heart failure, or congestive heart failure, an ejection fraction that's approaching the level that they'll need a heart transplant. And 2-3 months on a carnivore diet, it's normal again, and they're off all their medications. What the hell is that? You can save someone from having a heart transplant. That's insane. That's amazing. And diabetes just goes away. So many things stem from the complications of diabetes. And it's, and then autoimmunity, people, regrowing their, repairing their lesions on MS. I mean, that's not supposed to happen. They're not supposed to go backwards, but they do when people go on a ketogenic carnivore diet. and optimize their B12 and vitamin D and folate and things like that. I mean, these things all get better and their symptoms go away. And then
Yes.
on MRI, we see the lesions going down. I'm putting together a case series of people with MS to publish this on people that have reversed MS, both from a symptom point of view and on their MRIs, just with the carnivore diet. That's it. No medications.
Yes.
And so, it's you can't just keep denying reality. And so eventually the truth will out.
100%. And just on what you said about, the media and articles, and I saw one that was just released, I don't know, in the last 24 hours, 48 hours, something like that, in one of the Australian carnivore groups. Somebody posted it, and I spent quite a bit of time, and I don't usually spend a lot of time reading comments, but I went through the comments from everybody in this group sharing their story and sharing their story and sharing their story. And why doesn't somebody screenshot that and share it? Because I was just like, and you just told us so many different types of health conditions that can get cured or can get better. And that's what I was seeing in all the comments. It wasn't like, oh, carnivore does this. It's carnivore can help with all of these things. And all you have to see is real life evidence to show that it's working. When we book a hotel room, don't we go or book anything or buy something? Don't we go and read the reviews? That's really important to me, to see what other people have experienced. Well, I think when you're in communities and on social media in groups, the stories, there's so many stories and photos and experiences. Like, I haven't seen that many negative or people saying anything negative or bad that's happened to them through the diet from what I've seen. So
No.
kind of can't fight with that.
And if it is something, it's something that's readily addressable. So it's almost always something that is very easy and straightforward to point out. Some people say, well, I'm not losing weight, it didn't work for me, and that's a shame because I felt so much better, had better energy, and my autoimmunity went in remission. I could come off all my medications. I didn't have to take blood pressure anymore, but I couldn't lose weight, so I guess it didn't work for me. And I'm like, sounded like it worked pretty damn well to me. And then you say, okay, what exactly are you eating? And turns out they're still eating like erythritol, monk fruit sugar, and those sorts of things, and dairy. And it's just like, okay, well, those are classic ways to stall your weight loss.
Yes.
And so, I work with, sorry, go on.
Sorry, just on dairy. Can we just talk a little bit about dairy? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on dairy. I was eating yogurt a little bit. Like, yogurt's something that I would stop and start, but most recently I've stopped yogurt and feel a lot better. So does yogurt really come under the carnivore umbrella?
Well, I mean, it is. I mean, it is carnivore, but I think it's a bit of a gray area. It's not. I think you really just meat and eggs. That's really that's the meal. Dairy has good nutrients in it, but it can have some pro-inflammatory ingredients as well, like the casein, especially A1 casein, is more pro-inflammatory than A2, but A2 is still pro-inflammatory. So people, especially with autoimmune issues and all that sort of stuff, joint soreness, arthritis, things like that, good idea to stay away from it. But also it has casomorphins, which are there to encourage the baby mammal to keep drinking and eat more so that it grows faster, because baby animals are vulnerable. They're vulnerable to predators. You need to be an adult, be able to fight back and run faster. And so when we eat dairy as an adult, same thing happens as a kid. It tells us to eat more. And so when you're eating just fatty meat and water, your body tells you when to stop. And so you don't have to figure that out for yourself. When you're adding in carbs, then it disrupts that and you end up overeating. And but the same for dairy and for those casomorphins, which they can also have carbs as well. So I think that's something people should be really cautious with dairy. I think that people always feel best on just meat and water. Butter is usually fine. I mean, it has most of the milk proteins and solids and things like that taken out of it, and the casomorphins are mostly out of it at that point. So most of the time people do fine with that, or ghee, do really well with. But the other forms of dairy are not ideal for that sense. And so if you for instance, like they used to use skim milk, which was a byproduct of the butter and cream industry. For hundreds of years, they would use skim milk to slaughter pigs, and they would give them grains and skim milk, and that was to
Yeah.
fatten them up. And I found a paper from 1930 talking about how this practice was done for centuries in order to fatten them up to get more lard, because lard was such an important commodity, because fat is such an important commodity
Yes.
for human health and nutrition. And so it said, to fatten these up, we give them skim milk and grains, and that causes them to overeat even more than just grains or milk on their own. And so you give them the combination of the grains and the milk, and that causes them to really overeat and really get fat. Um, what is grains and skim milk? Cornflakes, right? Breakfast cereal, right? So it's just, I mean, that's what we've been using to fatten up hogs for slaughter for
Yep.
centuries. And for some reason, we have no idea what's causing the obesity epidemic. Somehow, we just don't quite get it.
Wow, I've never heard.
And
Mm.
yeah, so it's interesting what you find, but like so dairy is problematic for those reasons. So if you're going to use dairy, if you don't have a problem with dairy, like it doesn't react with you badly and you feel fine, you should still use it very sparingly and only as a condiment. You should melt some cheese onto meat, have some cheese in your eggs or omelet or something like that occasionally. But it's not something you should really have all the time. It can cause you to overeat. It can increase inflammation. And if you're prone to that, or you have autoimmune issues, it will make those things worse.
Mm.
And so, just be mindful of that. Raw dairy is a very different thing than pasteurized dairy as well. So keep that in mind. And if you're in France and they have just some amazing raw cheeses and raw butter and stuff like that, and you're only going to be there for a bit, and you try those out, and it's like, fine, enjoy yourself, but
Mm.
they get back on track and just cook
Yes.
them meat and water. Those are the main things. So just stick with meat, eggs, and water. Keep dairy to a minimum, if at all. I always feel better without it. Most people always feel better without it, and you typically do better without it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And also recently I added in electrolyte salts. I wasn't having electrolyte salts before, and I've just added them in. What's your thoughts about that? Is that really important on the carnivore diet in your
For some
water?
people, yeah, for some people it is. Yeah, definitely. Especially early on when we're normalizing our insulin levels, it can be very helpful. When your insulin is coming back down, you can lose too many electrolytes, but it rebalances because there's other sides to those actions. It's not just insulin that drives the retention or excretion of electrolytes. It's balanced with a lot of other processes, but insulin is a very important part of that process. But when your insulin levels come down to a normal level, those other processes balance out because you have to have a balanced equation for your electrolytes, or you die. If you get too much, then you die. If you get too little, then you die. And no one's born with insulin resistance. Kids are born in ketosis.
Mm.
And so it takes years and decades to build up insulin resistance, and therefore your insulin has to steadily rise and rise and rise and cause excessive electrolyte reabsorption. So your kidneys actually have to pull extra hard to get
Mm.
the right amount of electrolytes out to keep a balanced equation in your serum, so you don't die of too much of electrolytes. So it takes decades to get your insulin up that high, but it only takes months to get your insulin down again. So it's a big sort of let off. It takes years. You have years to sort of balance and adjust to the growing level of insulin, but then you're sort of taking the rug out from under your kidneys when you go on a ketogenic diet like this. And so some people's kidneys will adapt and will be able to modify and be okay. Others don't. And so it's usually early on. Some people attribute that to like the what was called the keto flu. It used to be called the Atkins flu. And
Yeah.
just feeling kind of rotten, getting postural hypotension. So you stand up and get dizzy and have to sit down again. And wait for it to pass. And that can be from losing too many electrolytes and becoming dehydrated and hypovolemic as a result. Most people don't need them once they're fat adapted, keto adapted, and their insulin's come back down. But there are some people that still need a bit of help with their electrolytes. Like I don't use salt at all anymore. You do get electrolytes from the meat that you're eating. And salt just doesn't taste good to me anymore. If I put salt on steak, it tastes way too salty. I had it, which sort of sucks because I have bacon now and it just tastes like a salt lick. I'm like, oh God. And I like bacon, but it's like it's way too salty for me now. And so it's you just sort of just see what your body needs. So if you feel much better with the electrolytes, then take them. Do try to take them, the ones that don't have artificial sweeteners and artificial ingredients and flavorings, though. That's really important. Yeah.
We've got a Australian electrolyte company coming down to Adelaide for the event, and will be joining us there. So I'm really excited to have him there. He's got a heap of great products and a wealth of knowledge in that area. So that's really good. Hey, before we go, somebody, and I thought it'd be best we talk about this because this is actually how I got onto the carnivore diet in the first place. Somebody asked about building muscle on carnivore diet, and my story goes that I had quite a big body transformation, lost 23 kilos, 10% body fat, and I was going to do a bikini bodybuilding competition, and I got very sick about 3-4 weeks out, and my trainer at the time, who you know very well also, Anthony Chaffee, he suggested, well, why don't you try doing carnivore for the last 4 weeks of your comp prep? And I'm like, okay, well, I need to do something to help me get through. And my whole body just changed, and I had incredible muscle. I was very, very lean. Like my body fat percentage was pretty low, and where it needed to be for what I was doing. But since then, I have personally been able to maintain a lean physique and build muscle really easily on this diet. So how about you? And what are you finding?
I found that it's never been easier to put on muscle than when on a carnivore diet. If you want to, people say, well, you need carbs to bulk, and if you want to bulk with fat, then sure, do carbs. You can certainly bulk up. You'll put on weight, but is the point to just weigh more and be a fat ass, or do you want to actually put on muscle? And I'm trying to put on muscle. I'm not trying to put on fat just for the sake of weighing more.
Yes.
I'm not a jockey. I don't have to weigh a specific weight, and so it's much better. When you're eating carbohydrates, you'll slam up your insulin, and you'll put on muscle, but you'll also put on fat, and you'll put on intramuscular fat, and you'll bring in water weight into your muscles as well, so they'll look more plump. But that's not because they have more muscle there. And so people normally, when they bulk up, they find that they will bulk up with fat and muscle. And some people will say that, you can't put on muscle without fat. You have to put on muscle and fat, and you have to lean down, and you'll lose some of that muscle when you lose the fat as well. It's completely untrue. You're putting on fat in your muscles, so your muscles look bulkier, but they are not. It's like marbling in a steak. It's called myosteatosis, and we see this on MRIs, and that's a pathological sign. And and the way you get myosteatosis and marbling in cows is by giving them grains, and actually in pigs, giving them skim milk and grains. So that's how you get things fat. If that's where you want, that's the kind of bulk that you want, then go for it. But if you want lean body mass and to be healthy, and also you eat all those carbs. We have high performance athletes. Prof Noakes in South Africa. He's one of the top exercise sports physiologists and sports medicine doctors in the world, and he's doing randomized controlled trials and crossover studies with athletes doing carbohydrates or ketogenic, and they're finding that the carb athletes and the low carb athletes perform at the exact same level. In fact, the keto athletes can actually perform at a higher level once they get fully adapted, and then they just run off their fat stores. They never run out of energy. And then the carb group, while they're still performing at a high level and they're elite athletes, they're all pre-diabetic. Some of them are actually diabetic, right? So the carbs are killing them, even though they're getting whatever performance out of it. That's not really the importance, and it's not even better in performance. So it's not even like people taking a certain substance that's going to hurt them in the long run, but it'll make them win the race. That would be worth it to a lot of people. That's why a lot of people, take PEDs, but they're not even getting that. They're not even getting, better performance. So, it's not the case that you have to have a bunch of carbs to put on muscle. You need protein and actually fat and cholesterol to put on muscle. Your hormones are made out of cholesterol, like testosterone. It's made out of cholesterol. And so if you don't have enough cholesterol and if you don't have enough fat, you're not going to make testosterone and you're not going to put on muscle. And, so it's very, very easy to put on muscle. You get very lean. Your body wants you at a specific lean body mass. When I'm working out, when I'm playing rugby, sprinting, lifting weights, I'm usually around 5-6% body fat. I'm, 44-year-old man, like middle-aged, and I've got veins on my abs, and I'm not even working out, so it's like, it's easier to stay in shape, to get in shape and stay in shape than I've ever found. Normally I'm playing a lot of sports, but, I'm a few weeks out of the season and I start, chunking up. And then, you get sort of flabby and lose a lot of your muscle and your leanness in the off season, if you're not training. And then, it takes a month or so to start getting back into shape. I'm always in shape now.
Yeah.
I'm never not in shape. I can get better shape, but I never get out of shape.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right. I've found the same. I just turned 41 last week, and I've got people that just cannot believe that I'm 41. And I also don't feel 41. What's 41 meant to feel like anyway, I guess. Age is just a number. But when you do eat like this and you live your life like this, you do feel so much more vibrant and energetic, that you feel younger. I often say I actually feel like I'm 18 again, because this is how I felt when I was 18. So I often say to people, I don't just want you to look the way that I look. I want you to feel the way that I feel. I think it's just so important for people to understand. And like I said before, I just think people have not felt great in a really long time. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I was like I did when I was 22.
Yeah.
When I was doing carnivore then without realizing it, because I just refused to eat plants. Um, and then I actually feel better now at 44 than I did at 27, 28, playing professional rugby, working out all the time.
Yeah.
I definitely feel better. I can work way harder and have way more energy, much better health, much better mental health. I mean, I was never sick. I always ate very clean, tried to eat, just all whole foods, things like that. I always cooked. I never ate out. Anything like that. I maybe would have had pizza once every couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something that I was into. I always cooked. My mom always cooked, and I learned how to cook from that, and I preferred that. And so so I never had a health problem. But even then, my health is so much better than I didn't even realize how crummy I felt until I just didn't feel it anymore. And it's been amazing. And so that's definitely, I agree with you. The best part is how I feel. And when you feel good, you're able to, have energy to go exercise and to go do more things and to enjoy your life. And that's the whole point, is just to enjoy your life and be healthy. And that's why I want people to know about it, so they can do the same thing.
Yes, absolutely. Well, on that point, I think we'll end it there, because we've covered a whole heap of amazing information, and there's a lot of people asking questions, and I think more specifically, if they have those kinds of questions, you have a community. Do you want to tell us a bit about your community? If people want to join and need extra support and help and guidance, where do they find you?
Yeah. So, thank you. So, people can go to howtocarnivore.com. And they can take a look there. We have a sort of a carnivore challenge, has a lot of online resources and apps, like you join the school app, and a lot of different resources there that people can follow. We're going to have more experts and coaches joining in for monthly calls. I do weekly calls and Q&A sessions, and I also have a Patreon community that's less for people that need a bit of hand holding and sort of get going on it sort of experience, like the How to Carnivore is. Patreon is just a community for people just to hang out and have support and be around other like-minded people. We have Q&A sessions there as well. and sort of hangout sessions, book clubs, early release videos, things like that. But it's more of a community sort of feel, and so I quite like that as well.
Mhm.
Those are the main ones, and but I also try to make everything available for free online. I don't believe in paywalls and make it so people have to pay to get this information. This is this
Yeah,
belongs to everyone. This is a human right to be healthy, and so that
yeah,
information I keep available, and so people go to my YouTube channel and go through the playlists there on getting started on carnivore diet, or there's ones on cancer, mental health, autism, sports athletics, and building muscle, and all these other sorts of things. And
yeah.
so people can go and check those out as well, and that's a good resource if people want to check it out for free.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that information that you share. And that's how I found you initially, was just watching you on YouTube. So we'll touch on, again, the event. So a lot of people have been debating why we're doing a live at 6:30 a.m. in the morning, and it's not 6:30 a.m. in the morning where we are.
Yeah,
We are
true.
we are in Australia, and it's currently 8:30 p.m. where I am. So if you're in Australia and you're interested in coming and hearing from Dr. Chaffee and some of the world and Australia's leading carnivore experts, we're running an event I'm hosting here in Adelaide, November 23rd, Carnivore Collective Live. If you're interested, just jump onto my Instagram profile and you'll find the link to that event. It's about 2/3 sold out. We have people flying into Adelaide from all over Australia. We've got people joining us from New Zealand, some people coming from America. It's going to be an incredible event. And something you just touched on before, which is about being in a community of like-minded people. And I had an older woman call me to talk about the event she's attending on her own. And she said, one of the things I'm most looking forward to is being around people that understand me, people that are
Mhm.
living the way that I'm living, because there are a lot of people who don't quite understand what I'm doing and why. And I'm really looking forward to finding my people and sharing my experiences and being understood. And I think that a lot of people on the day are going to feel like that. So very
Yeah.
excited for it, and really excited to have you in Adelaide in November.
Yeah, me too. And yeah, I think it's great to see and connect with everybody. And that's where I hear most, a lot of the stories. Obviously, you see a lot of people online and see a lot of their stories, which is amazing in the comments section. That's the thing too. If someone has a question about it, maybe they have multiple sclerosis. Go to the videos that I have interviewing people that have recovered from multiple sclerosis. Go to the comments. There are even more people that have recovered from that and all these other sorts of things as well. And that can give you a lot of good insight on what you can expect as well. And so I really like meeting people at these events. It's really heartwarming. It makes dealing with all the nonsense and people saying that I'm killing people and that I'm a fraud and that I'm not actually a real doctor. It's just like, well, it's news to me. You saying that I'm not doesn't actually take away my medical license. So
Yes.
you're dumb. And but it's nice to see people and they say, and they tell you all the different things that they healed and how their life is so much better. It's amazing. I mean, I hear people saying that going on a carnivore diet literally saved their life. I've heard that
Yeah.
so many times. I can't tell you, and it's just amazing to hear that. People that are so crippled and hurt
Mhm.
with their chronic illness, and now they're living a completely normal life. It's amazing,
Yeah.
and so it's always great to see those. And so yeah, everybody's welcome, and will be great to see everybody who comes.
Yes, thank you. And I wrote down one thing I did write down from earlier on that you said, which is going to stick with me and clearly be the theme of what the event is all about. It says proper health is so simple, and it really is. And people need to understand that a bit more, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And we should be healthy. We're supposed to be healthy. We're naturally healthy, and so if we're not healthy as a species, I mean, that's something's wrong. And so,
Yes.
I think it's what we're eating. I think that's the majority of it. But there's other things too. You have these different exposures,
Yeah.
and it's screwing up our physiology and our body. And so we just need to recognize that and get away from it, and we'll be all right.
That's it. Thank you
Mhm.
so much for coming on. Appreciate your time. And
No problem.
thanks to everybody who joined us and enjoyed the conversation. And we'll see you in Adelaide in November.
See you then.
Thank you.
Can't wait.
Bye.
Bye.